All right, we should be good to go. Let me see if I remember how to do this. Are y'all here? Do y'all remember who I am? It's been a minute, man. It's been a minute, but it's so good to see everybody in here. Hopefully y'all are doing well on this Black Friday. You got your black brother up here on a Black Friday. All right, I forgot how to live stream. I'm wilding out. I need to relax. Welcome, y'all. Welcome back to another YouTube live stream and another episode of the ClassE Morning Show. Not starting out so classy, but we'll get there. I'm your host, ClassE, at patreon.com/ClassEbeats. By the way, the link is in the description as well as in the pinned comment in the chat. And hopefully y'all are doing well, man. Hopefully everybody's feeling good. Y'all are getting over the turkey hangovers from yesterday, and hopefully y'all got to spend some time with your family and friends and have an absolutely amazing day. It's going to be a great time. We got a great show for y'all. As usual, we're talking about James Comey, Letitia James, President Trump, Candace Owens. We got a little bit of Karen Reed in there for you. It's going to be a wild one. So y'all get ready for it. If you could, please drop a 1 in the chat and let me know if you can hear me. We're looking all crispy and clean on the screen for you today. Let's go ahead and get into it. But before I do, I've got to say what's up to the people and shout out everybody who makes this show the place it is. Of course, started with my awesome, amazing Amy. Shout out to the beautiful Amy E is in here. Y'all see her in the building every single show. She does not miss. Supposed to be off today, but she's in here showing love. Les Cleaver in the building. We got A Fist. Mr. Brown is in here. Nosy Rosie back at it. In Blue is in here as well. And the big dog, J Money, is in the building as well. Good to see y'all. It's great to see everybody in here. We've got an action-packed show for you, and I'm excited and ready to get into it as well. If you haven't yet, I don't ask for much on this show, but the one thing I do ask is that you like the video on your way in. Likes are free, helps the channel continue to grow, lets the algorithm know that y'all are enjoying the show, shares the video, the channel, this live stream out with more people. So if y'all could take a second, like the video, it's free, helps us out so much. Also, if you're feeling extra generous, you can share the video by clicking the share button. It's got an arrow that's curved and pointing to the right. That'll allow you to share it to X, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you're on social media, and even in your group chat in text. So if you want to do that, click the share button. And last but not least, I will be reading super chats as we go throughout the show. So thank you to all of you who go the extra mile and send in super chats as well. All right. We got Linda in here too. Good to see you. I think I said what's up to Nosy Rosie. All right. We've got an action-packed show. As I said, let's go ahead and get into it. And then, of course, we had to start today's show with one of my favorite topics. Y'all know what time it is. Yes, absolutely. We are going to start with Fani WIllis and talk about how it's officially over. This entire BS case that Fani WIllis, in conjunction with the White House, again, allegedly, brought this case against President Trump for election interference when it comes to the state right here in Georgia. So it's official. It's over. Pete, he looked at everything. He said, nobody wants to take on this case since Fani WIllis got kicked off. Pete said, I'll take it over. I'll look at everything. This man took about a week to look at this and said, oh, this is what we're doing. Get this out of here. Shot that thing down, threw it out. We're going to hear from Fox 5 right here in Atlanta and find out what actually happened and what it's going to look like for the president moving forward. Here we go.
Hour with some breaking news. We are learning new information about the Georgia election interference case. In the last 30 minutes, a motion has been filed to dismiss it. So Fox 5's Eric Perry is joining me now live with the details. Eric, this is a case that just seems like it's unraveling by the second, barely hanging on here.
You know, we thought we had maybe like a breath, especially since Pete Scandalakis appointed himself over it after they were given a deadline of Fani WIllis. You're looking at some video there to step down and put a new prosecutor on this case there. Again, within the past 15 minutes, we got a 22-page document on really going over his motion as to why he says the case should be dismissed. Now, Pete Scandalakis, he is over the now District Attorney Pro Temp with the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia there. So he kind of appointed himself. I want to go through some of the things together.
No, he didn't kind of appoint himself. He did. Nobody wanted to take this case. If y'all remember, we covered it here, that Pete was looking for attorneys left and right that had a certain amount of time. I think, if I remember, the judge gave them about a month. Nobody wanted to take this case, which we knew. We called it here on the show, said nobody's going to take this case. Pete appointed himself, And as soon as he appointed himself, instead of just letting it be dismissed, we knew exactly how this was going to go. Y'all could check the receipts. I said, this is going to be done. Pete's going to make the political move. He's going to say, I'm going to look at everything. He's going to call up the president. He's say, hey, President Trump, I got you. Dismissed. And that's exactly what he did. Shout out to Pete.
And again, this is what makes the Fox News Live really a good forum for this. We can break it down. One of the things he says was when he got this case, some people thought that this case was on life support. He says that unlike family members who must make the emotional decision to withdraw ones, he says he has no emotional connection to this case, which is one of the reasons why. He goes into detail a timeline starting with a December 14th, 2020 kind of phone call there, which is all of this is going around where now President, again, Donald Trump, then President Donald Trump was going out. Remember, Joe Biden was coming in for the president. So a lot of different things and different terms to go through. He made a phone call to officials here asking for more votes, or that was what was alleged here. But he goes through each one here, 22 pages, and goes through his philosophies and beliefs. One thing I thought was kind of important to mention, he says, given the substantial constitutional, federal, and state issues implicated in his case, the length of time, which he also makes really points throughout all of this, and the court's interest is some of the reasons why he says that he wants to, or he's moving for this to be dismissed. Some notes that I've jotted down. He also went through different characters in this case, right? Of course, we know the biggest character and the most well-known would be now President Donald Trump. Then he was on his way out as the new president, Joe Biden at the time, was coming in. But Mark Meadows, Jeffrey Clark, David Schaefer, other Republican electors, he went through and gave really a account of why he believes each of these cases or the counts should be dismissed. But at the end, he also says overt acts such as arranging a phone call, in which we've seen, issuing a public statement, tweeting to the public to watch the Georgia Senate committee. He goes through all of that, says are not acts I would consider sufficient to sustain a RICO case. And this is,
and we're going to hear that phone call later. Guys, the phone call that took place was so lame that it was used as evidence to bring this case that you're going to be surprised. We're actually going to play the phone call later. Basically, President Trump says, hey, man, I don't know how, but we're missing about 20,000 votes. I know for a fact I got those votes. What is going on in Georgia? We need to figure this out. And then they use that as a way to say, though, the president was trying to interfere with the election. It's just, this case was totally botched from the beginning.
Where District Attorney Fani WIllis was making her case in. He says that he spent a lot of time there. And at the end of this, he ends it by saying he knows that there's a deep political divide in this country right now. He says this decision will not be universally popular. He goes on to say that he knows people will criticize. He welcomes people to criticize their public officials, but he also ends it by saying threats and violence has no place in that process. Going through all of that, he says his assumption here, or his motion, has been guided based on evidence of the law and principles of justice here. So this is a 22-page document that we've been going through. We're still going through with the fine-tooth comb here. We know Pete Scandalakis will not have any comments there, but we did reach out to the district attorney's office, Fani WIllis. Now, this is the day before Thanksgiving. I'm sure she probably is not thankful for this. I would assume this is not what she wanted to have happened there, but we did reach out to her office, and hopefully we'll get some sort of a statement back. We'll be reaching out, especially I'm curious to see what our Georgia gang members, those on both sides of the aisle, is this something that is welcome? Is this something that's going to be controversial? This will definitely be a talker for many people over their Thanksgiving tables tomorrow.
Yeah, and even looking at this case in general, a lot of being said about the president now being the president and no one wanting to prosecute this or go against a seated president. I think either way, we would have gotten to this point if the president were in office or not, because Fani, she messed up. Fani and Nathan Wade messed up this entire case. Ashley Merchant did her thing, and they started looking into the details of this case and where it was headed. Even if you weren't the president, you could simply look at this from a standpoint of someone who's not even an attorney and say this was BS. How was this brought? I think we'd still be in the same place, even if Donald Trump wasn't the president.
certainly will. And when you think at the beginning of Fani Willis's time in this position, she came out with that hammer in full force, saying she was coming after President Trump and all of his allies. She said that there was going to be some sort of ramification for this. It seems like as of right now, that just might not be the case.
You know, you and I both covered the big ceremonious when he turned himself in through the streets of Atlanta, the amount of resources.
Who could forget that mugshot?
The mugshot, you know, the resources, the amount of money and time that this has been. And that was another thing that he kind of mentioned throughout here. By the time the president would be able to stand trial to this, it would be 8 years removed since that phone call. He can't go to trial, be prosecuted while he's in office. And even if you went maybe the day after he left office, he says that an immediate trial would be impossible. So who knows what timeline we would be facing for this. So, of course, we are combing through this. We are, look, all hands on deck in the newsroom as we are focusing and trying to get the major points, and we'll have the latest for you at noon and 2.
And we've got some more updates here. Y'all know I try and keep it fair. Ever since I heard a big complaint about using Fox News or using Newsmax. So we're going to hear from both sides. And I cannot wait to hear how CNN covered this. Even with their title, you could tell not happy. Georgia prosecutor kills 2020 election interference case against Trump and allies. Check this out.
A Georgia prosecutor
CNN
officially dropped the historic racketeering case against President Trump and others for attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election. I want to go right to CNN's Kara Scannell. What are you learning, Kara?
Here we go.
Good morning, Pam. Yeah, this new filing in from the prosecutor who had taken the place to look into the Fulton County investigation of Donald Trump and others has filed a motion with the court saying that they are not going to move forward with the case or dropping the charges. What he filed what's known as a nolle pros, and that means that in theory, because if the statute of limitations hasn't run out, a case could be refiled. But he attached to his filing about a 20-page statement explaining his rationales for why he did not think that they should move forward with this case. You'll remember this was the case that began with Donald Trump making the call to the Georgia Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, urging him to find the votes. And then District Attorney Fani Willis brought this historic investigation and filed those racketeering charges against Donald Trump and dozens of others for interfering with the 2020 election. She was then disqualified from the case because of an undisclosed romantic relationship with another prosecutor. And that is how this case now fell into the hands earlier this month of a prosecutor who was assigned the job of trying to find someone to take on this case. He said that he couldn't because there were too many conflicts and he took it on himself. Now we're seeing the results of that, and that is that he is saying that they are not going to move forward with this case. And he summarized it in part by saying that he made this decision by examining the case file, examining what the jury had been presented, and also considerations of the law. He says that, contesting an election is not unlawful, but and that is part of the reasons for why he decided not to move forward with the charges.
Not to mention he doesn't want to go against the 47th president of the United States. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Fani Willis taking another L. Rightfully so. This case was BS. We're going to talk about the president and a little bit more of this case moving forward into the next video. Let me know if this was the right thing. If Pete made the right decision, what you would do in this case. Oh man, I gotta sneeze. Give me a second, y'all. All right, we got it down there. Shout out to the gang. We got 7,000 of you in the building. Thank you to everybody that's in here. And most of y'all have liked the video as well. And I gotta give a big shout out and thank you to my awesome, amazing Amy in here. She just gifted 5 memberships. Wow. She does it all, man. Thank you. I appreciate the bless you. If you got a membership from Amy, make sure you say thank you. Not only that, make sure you check out the members only content and you get instant access to all the videos we have here on the channel as soon as they drop. So make sure you check out the members only benefits. You get your name highlighted in that beautiful green. And also, while I'm thinking about it, make sure you go and subscribe to Amy's channel. J Money dropped the link in the chat for y'all. If you didn't know, Amy does have a YouTube channel. Y'all should go over there, subscribe, show her some support, watch every single video. You could binge watch it because the content is absolutely amazing. So shout out to Amy for doing it all, man. Showing love. She's going crazy as always. All right, let me double check and make sure. I think I might have lost one of my videos. No, we should be good. We should be good. So we're going to keep it going with this topic because we've got more to talk about, man, when it comes to Fani Willis and the president and this case getting dismissed. This one is, it might trigger me a little bit. I'm not going to lie, because we're going to talk about the money side of things and how a lot of us here in Fulton County have been paying for this whole BS, and how the lawmakers included in this want to get their money. So let me keep it moving here. Shout out to y'all. Thank you for the bless you in the chat. Y'all are so nice, man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go ahead and get into it. So now that this entire BS election interference case against the president of the United States has been dropped, of course, you know, Donald Trump is not going to miss any chance to talk some smack, and specifically when it comes to Fani Willis. So we're going to hear from the president what he had to say. We're also going to look at and see some of the evidence that was presented in this case when it comes to why Fani Willis and the White House at the time chose to pursue this in the first place. So let's hear from 11 Live News right here in Atlanta and see what they have to say.
And we continue to follow breaking news. The Georgia election interference case finally reaching an end. Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee dismissed all charges this morning against President Donald Trump and his 14 remaining co-defendants.
Really big news out today. That ruling came less than an hour after Special Prosecutor Pete Scandalakis, he told the courts he believed the case should not move forward to, quote, serve the interest of justice and promote judicial finality. President Trump posting on Truth Social, in part, law and justice have prevailed in the great state of Georgia as the corrupt Fani Willis witch hunt against me and other great American patriots has been dismissed in its entirety.
Now, bringing this up, I want y'all to tell me in the comments and in the chat. We're going to talk about Letitia James and James Comey a little bit later in another video. But with this being officially dismissed, do you see something going on between the Department of Justice and Fani Willis, specifically when it comes to how Fani Willis chose to move throughout this entire elections interference case, her involvement with Nathan Wade, how she was spending money, where the money was going, and why this case was brought in the first place? Because if this could just get so easily dismissed by Pete within 4 weeks, it really seems like it was just a week since he actually had the files. How did we get here in the first place? I want to know what y'all think about that.
Well, 11 Alive's Grace King has been following this case when it was brought down in 2023 to now, joining us live here in the newsroom. Grace, where this case was stalled for nearly 2 years.
Grace, why won't it resume?
Well, Special Prosecutor Pete Scandalakis says this case was on life support when it came before the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia. And that he had to decide whether there was enough evidence for it to survive. He says his review raised too many questions about the case's jurisdiction, findings, and timeline for the prosecution to continue forward. There's not a lot in the 2020 election interference indictment that Pete Scandalakis would take to trial.
The document that he submitted to the court goes through his thinking about all of the different charges against all of the different people.
In the fake elector allegations, where several defendants are accused of having 16 Republicans meet at the Georgia state capitol to sign electoral college documents falsely claiming Trump won Georgia in 2020, Scandalakis wrote he found no criminal intent behind their plan to challenge the election results. In Coffee County, where several defendants are accused of illegally accessing and inspecting voting software and copying election data, two defendants, Sidney Powell and Scott Hall, had already pled guilty. Scandalakis says they played the key roles in that scheme and felt further prosecution is unwarranted.
I have to find 12,000 votes, and I have them times a lot, and therefore I won the state.
And in this infamous leaked call between President Donald Trump and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, where Trump pressed him on Georgia's results and referenced the number of votes needed to put him ahead of Biden, Scandalakis says he believes there are two equally plausible interpretations and that the burden of proof is on the state, not the defendants.
It's absolutely true that RICO cases take a lot of time. They take a lot of witnesses. There's often a lot of documentary evidence that jurors have to follow along with. And it can be a very complicated narrative.
Plus.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think that so much has been leaked by this DA's office. I don't know. There's been other cases that we've covered here on this channel that we've been like, man, can we please just see some of this information? Somebody leak it. I want to know what's going on. Nope. Hasn't seen anything. When it comes to Fulton County, when it comes to this district attorney's office, you've got Young Thug's phone calls. You've got Young Thug's phone conversations while he was in jail. You've got all this information leaking, but for some reason, it seems like the district attorney's office here loves leaking, or there's a huge leak in information, which I find interesting.
Emory Law professor Kay Levine says you have to factor in politics.
Jury selection would take a very long time to find people who don't know very much about the case or hadn't formed pre-existing notions about guilt or innocence for any of the alleged co-conspirators.
Skandalakis says there is no realistic prospect that a sitting president will be compelled to appear in Georgia to stand trial on the allegations in this indictment, and that separating his case from the others would be both illogical and unduly burdensome and costly for the state and for Fulton County.
We've already spent enough.
And Skandalakis says he knows his decision will not be universally popular, but that his job is not to satisfy public opinion. He says his decision was guided solely by the evidence, laws, and principles.
All right. And then we've got an update, especially when it comes to the cost. This is going to hurt my feelings, but we're going to talk about the implications when it comes to money here. Because I'm right here in Fulton County. Amy's here in Fulton County. So many of y'all that watch the show are in Fulton County and ended up paying for this BS and will continue to. It's looking like. Let's see what 11 Alive has to say about this when it comes to who's going to pay these people, because the lawyer said we had to go through all this BS. Somebody needs to pay us. Oh, it hurts my feelings.
We're continuing to follow coverage of
Pete
the election
Skandalakis.
interference case now dropped in Fulton County. And taxpayers in Fulton County could be on the hook for millions of dollars in legal fees spent on the 2020 election interference case against President Donald Trump and more than a dozen others. A new state law allows for reimbursement in cases where the prosecutor is disqualified for misconduct and those charges are dismissed. 11 Alive's Grace King joining us live from the newsroom today. This law we're talking about, Grace, Senate Bill 244, went into effect this year. You have covered this case from the first indictment 2 years ago. Where does it go from here?
Well, now that all charges are dismissed, the criminal part of this case is over, but multiple attorneys tell 11 Alive they will be filing motions to recoup their legal fees.
Dang.
They went through campaign finance records to see how much that could cost.
Can Fani pay that?
It's hard to quantify just how much the state v. Donald Trump has cost.
How expensive would attorney's fees in a case like this be? I can't even imagine.
The years-long legal battle reached every level of state court before Fulton County Judge Scott McAfee dismissed the whole thing. Emory Law professor Kay Levine says those costs will add up, especially when you look at the lawyers tapped for this case.
My guess is that they are
Ashley Merchant
they are well
get
compensated for the time and talent that they bring.
Campaign finance records show Save America paid more than $2.7 million in legal.
No. Come on, man. Steven, why are you charging so much? What's going on over there? I mean, we know you're good, but dang.
Consulting fees to law firms helping President Donald Trump. One of their main recipients was Steve Sadow, who says he will be moving for attorney's fees and costs under Georgia code.
There was a lot of pretrial
Steven about to get paid.
Conversation. There were certainly some pretrial occasions where the judge called people into court. There were motions filed or briefs filed by the lawyers.
Those same databases show the Make America Great Again PAC spent another $3.7 million on legal consulting for defendants in the case and recount efforts. But ultimately, Judge Scott McAfee will have to decide what reasonable costs are and what's actually related to this prosecution.
In civil cases, when lawyers file claims for fees, they will submit a bill, but the judge doesn't necessarily give it to them. That does not give, like you can say, like, I spent 500 hours on this case, and the judge will say, like, well, that's all well and good, but you're going to get compensated for 100 hours.
Wow.
Now, as written, the law says any reimbursement of legal fees would come from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, which receives state, federal, and local funding. The proposed Fulton County budget for next year is $39.4 million. But these attorneys' fees, in theory, could equal a decent chunk of that.
Wow.
Grace, thanks so much. Right now, political experts are weighing in on what can be learned from this case. We spoke to Emory political science professor Andra Gillespie.
that we need a new
to be a
DA.
lesson to be learned here about prosecutors making sure that their cases are airtight, and actually also that they don't open up any possible door for people to be able to get cases thrown out on technicality. So I think, people are going to scrutinize, and people will probably mention Fani Willis's alleged romantic entanglements as sort of a factor in the dismissal of the charges in this case. I think some people are going to look at this kind of based on their own partisan standpoint.
And you can check out all the coverage we have done on this.
All right, shout out to 11 Alive News for reporting on that. Man, I hope we don't have to pay anything for this. Dang. Let the DA's office pay it. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat. Not a happy situation, but I'm sure glad that this is over. We don't have to hear about it anymore because it shouldn't have been brought in the first place. I think there's going to be some retaliation. Well, we probably shouldn't call it retaliation considering what happened with Letitia James and James Comey, but I think there's going to be something else here, and this won't be the last time we hear about the election interference case. I want to know what y'all think in the comments and in the chat. Thank you again, everybody who's in the building. Shout out to y'all who are just joining us. I bet Miss Fani is fuming over this. She's been humiliated. She humiliated herself. And I don't like it being characterized as just the case not being airtight. This case was BS from the beginning. We saw what it was. The president said it right, that it was a witch hunt and they just wanted to get him. And by they, I mean, I don't think Fani Willis was the only one involved in this. Is Fani going to end up snitching one day? I hope so. I really hope so, because if not, somebody's going to throw her under the bus. So maybe we'll see even a bigger mess come out of this, because there were more people involved in this. And that's pretty easy to see considering Fani Willis's visit to the White House right before the president and everyone was indicted in this too. So let me see if I can find Letitia James, because we're going to talk about Letitia James here in a second. I've been hinting about it. And she gets a win against the president. We're going to talk about. First, they said Rice Street was messed up and they had no money to fix it. Now y'all expect the families to pay for it, and y'all are crazy dropping the bill off on them. This is crazy. Yep. Biden's White House helped Fani. We absolutely talked about it. She went up there with Andre Dickens to meet with somebody at the White House. We don't know who. Most likely Kamala Harris. We've talked about that and went through it here at the channel. The evidence is there, and I think there's going to be something that comes out about that. So Fani Willis, man, she better start talking, or maybe she's going to get that phone call. She might get a piece of paper, because the Department of Justice is not afraid to do it either. Shout out to Mr. Brown in here, dropping the 5 bomb, just showing some love. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving. Hopefully you're doing well. Had some good food. Spent some time with the family. Amy said Fani. I know we gotta find more content about Fani Willis, because I got to keep mispronouncing her name and annoying people. It's one of my favorite things to do. At least anytime I make a comment, or I should say a video about Fani Willis, and I mispronounce her name, somebody says something. So I probably enjoyed that a little bit too much. Either way, let's go ahead and get into our next topic. So now we've got to talk about Letitia James. In the last video, we were talking about President Trump and his win against Fani Willis. Now it's looking like the Department of Justice and President Trump are going to take an L when it comes to Letitia James and James Comey, for now, at least. So we just heard news and a recent update that Letitia James and James Comey are somewhat off the hook, because they found that this case against them, the indictments against them, needed to be dismissed because Lindsay Halligan was unfairly or unjustly appointed. So now we're going to get into the details behind that, what that means for Letitia James and James Comey moving forward. And we're actually going to hear from James Comey a little bit later. Check this out from CBS News.
Now we jump to our other big story. The Trump administration now vowing to appeal after a federal judge threw out the criminal case against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. In twin rulings, the judge found prosecutor Lindsay Halligan was unlawfully appointed, writing, quote, "All actions flowing from Ms. Halligan's defective appointment constitute unlawful exercise of executive power and must be set aside." Now, the dismissals are a significant win for Comey and James, who both argued their cases were vindictive prosecutions of President Trump's political rivals. In a statement, an attorney for James said, quote, "This case was not about justice or the law. It was about targeting Attorney General James." Meanwhile, Comey celebrated the ruling in this video.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude's going to be the same. I'm innocent. I am not afraid.
CBS News correspondent.
Here's the thing about that. The dismissal isn't because either one of them's innocent. Let's make that very clear. Nice try, James. We're smarter than that. We know what this dismissal means. This dismissal was because of Lindsay Halligan, and because it was seemingly rushed and not done the right way, not because you didn't actually lie in front of Senate. So we need to make that clear before we move on. It's a nice win for James right now, but we'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward, and if he's still off the hook.
Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with more on this. Good morning, Natalie. This is not the ruling the administration wants, so what type of reaction are we seeing there?
Yeah, good morning, Errol. The administration is standing by Lindsay Halligan, arguing that she was legally appointed, they say, and also indicating they will pursue all and any legal actions to challenge the decision yesterday. Recall that Halligan was appointed, took over as the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia in late September. And shortly after that, she secured these indictments for Comey and James. The judge in the decision yesterday noting that she was the only one to present the case to the grand jury and sign these indictments. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi also had appointed her as a special attorney so she could participate in legal proceedings in court. AG Bondi, reacting to this news yesterday, spoke to reporters about next steps. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, also speaking to reporters, was asked about the president's reaction. Take a listen.
His reaction was, we've seen this before. We've seen partisan judges take unprecedented steps to try to intervene in accountability before, but we're not going to give up.
We'll be taking all available legal action, including an immediate appeal, to hold Letitia James and James Comey accountable for their unlawful conduct. Lindsay Halligan is an excellent U.S. attorney, and shame on them for not wanting her in office.
Dang, they have
now,
to try
Bondi
again.
said she's going to keep going when asked about this case. And Caroline Leavitt noted that President Trump wants to see accountability, Errol.
All right, Natalie Brand, thank you very much.
Good luck with that.
CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Royfee is here with me in studio to give a bit of analysis on what we've just witnessed. Rebecca, this is a stunning rebuke. Good morning, welcome. On what grounds can the White House appeal this ruling? The judge seemed clear.
He did, but this is a legal ruling, so an appellate court could revisit the conclusion he had about the appropriateness of the appointment of Lindsay Halligan.
And the judge pointed to a specific window in which the administration could fill a vacant appointment and said this was outside of that. The Attorney General wasn't valid in appointing Halligan. So how?
So again, to those of y'all in the comments who are saying, oh, Comey didn't do anything wrong, he's innocent. That's not what this judge said in the dismissal. The judge didn't say, hey, there's nothing there. These claims are baseless. The judge didn't say, oh, Letitia James, you didn't do anything wrong. We know you didn't lie to the mortgage company. We know you didn't lie to the insurance company. No, you're okay. You're safe. No, they said Lindsay Halligan shouldn't have been the one to indict this. And that's the issue. Not the actual indictments themselves. It's the person who brought the indictment and signed it.
Could these charges be brought back for both James and Comey?
Yeah, so first of all, you know, it sounds as if this is sort of dismissing the indictment on a technicality, but it really is not a technicality because all those laws and the constitutional requirement are really about ensuring that there's a qualified U.S. attorney in place who is not only competent, but also adheres to the ethics of prosecutors to make sure that those prosecutions are fair. So, and as to your point, they did dismiss the indictment, but they did it without prejudice, which means that the prosecutor can bring another case. But of course, there's a complication here, which is that every criminal case has a statute of limitations, and James Comey's has run at this point. So it may be difficult for them to bring these charges again.
So this is not a ruling on the face of the charges. It's more the prosecutor who brought the charges.
Exactly.
The defense from both Comey and James was that this was a vindictive prosecution. So does that become a moot point at this stage, or might that be revived if the charges...
We don't want to hear that.
Absolutely, that could be revived if the charges come back, if the appeal is successful, or if for some reason they find a way to toll that statute of limitations. But again, that charge is somewhat similar to this one, because essentially what it's saying is that this is a prosecution brought by somebody who's a political appointee rather than somebody who's qualified, who is committed to the notion of impartial justice. And so if she is not qualified, then there could be, or she's requalified or the indictment comes back, there could be a new argument that the purpose of the indictment, the motive of the indictment was vindictive, that they singled out certain people because of their political beliefs.
And it sounds very familiar with what we just covered with Nathan Wade and Fani WIllis. Nathan Wade, appointed as a special prosecutor in the election interference case, had no experience whatsoever, was in a relationship with Fani WIllis, and we could all clearly see why Nathan Wade was there. Same thing they're saying with Lindsay Halligan. She shouldn't have been appointed, didn't have experience in this role. She was only brought there so she could bring these indictments before a grand jury and get them done before the statute of limitations ran out, especially specifically on James Comey's indictment. So now James Comey might be off the hook, but it's interesting to see how those two can relate and that President Trump was involved in both of those cases.
And those are some of the specifics, but what about the big picture here, the political kind of overview? Just in our last few seconds, has this damaged the administration's credibility in bringing forward charges like this?
Well, you know, I do think it has in certain respects. I mean, at least with regard to the different offices that we're looking to see whether or not these U.S. attorneys are qualified, because qualifications are not just about competence. They're about the very fundamental principle of the rule of law, which is that all people are treated equally, and we don't single out certain people because we dislike those people or we disagree with their political beliefs.
All right, Rebecca Royfee, great to have you here on this, and we'll discuss.
And shout out to Rebecca. We're also going to hear one more thing about Letitia James in this instance from MS Now. Check this out.
Federal case against former FBI Director James Comey has just been dismissed after a judge determined the interim U.S. attorney who brought the case, Lindsay Halligan, was unlawfully appointed. I want to bring in MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin, legal affairs reporter Fallon Gallagher, and Peter Baker stays with me. Guys, I was just handed the 29 pages of this. I don't know if either of you is a speed reader, but give us the high points or low points, depending on your perspective here.
There are two, and I should also break, Chris, on our air that this order, it looks as if Judge Cameron Curry has also entered a similar order with respect to Letitia James, who is also being prosecuted by the same office and by Lindsay Halligan in particular.
There you go.
My two high points here are as follows. One, this is a dismissal without prejudice, which means that the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia has an important choice before it. There is a federal statute that allows a case that has been time barred but is dismissed for other reasons to be brought again within a 6-month period of time. Theoretically, that gives the U.S. Attorney's Office then 6 months to bring the case against Jim Comey again. But that also means if they do that, they don't get a chance to appeal the ruling with respect to the lawfulness of Lindsay Halligan's appointment.
It's a tough decision.
You're asking, well, why would that be so important to them? It's important to them because they have at least 4 other people around the country who are similarly situated, who are appointed by the Attorney General in an interim capacity after that first 120 days under the statute has elapsed. And so it's very important to this president and this attorney general that its interim U.S. attorneys be able to continue as such. So that's point one. Okay. Point two would be that at the end of the opinion, Judge Curry says very clearly that they don't get to appoint another interim U.S. attorney, but rather that the power, as under the statute, remains with the district court to install an interim U.S. attorney unless and until the president nominates and the Senate confirms someone else. So it's not just that Lindsay Halligan herself can't remain in this position. It's that Attorney General Pam Bondi and the president cannot do this again. They're not entitled to use this same procedure or process, but rather the district judges of the Eastern District of Virginia, under the statute in place, are entitled to nominate and choose somebody of their own selection now going forward. And again, the U.S. Attorney's Office, whoever it's going to be led by in the future, it's not going to be Lindsay Halligan, it looks like, will have to make a choice in the Comey case whether to appeal or whether to try and file these charges again and still deal with some of the same motions to dismiss that Jim Comey has also brought, the one for vindictive and selective prosecution, for example, or stemming from what he calls the fundamental ambiguity of the charges against him. if they were to bring the case again, you have to imagine that Jim Comey and his legal team, led by Pat Fitzgerald, would bring those same motions yet again. And those are really fatal, in particular because they could lead to a dismissal with prejudice as opposed to here, where you've got a dismissal by Judge Curry without.
Because already, I mean, besides stating on the very first page that this was invalid, that the attempt to install Ms. Halligan as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was invalid, they go back to the factual background, the appointment, and they do not obviously address these other charges or that he was the other defense that he was putting forward, including what he called a fundamental ambiguity, as Lisa points out. So let's remind folks, what were and I guess could again be the charges against James?
Yeah, and I want to talk about Letitia James here too. So let's
right. So James Comey is in charge with 2 counts. One is obstruction of Congress, of a congressional proceeding, and one is lying to Congress. And all of this stems from a hearing in 2020 and where he was testifying about something that he had initially testified about in 2017. And so this indictment came down just days before that statute of limitations was going to end. And so they had to get Halligan in there very quickly and secure this indictment very quickly. I believe she was 3 or 4 days on the job when she actually did this. And as we know, and as we've discussed extensively, she went into that grand jury room by herself and presented this indictment. And as we learned last week when I was in court, Comey's team came out with a motion to dismiss late Friday night, saying that they believe that there was not even a valid indictment in place. So we didn't even get to those motions to dismiss based on the alleged grand jury misconduct that happened. You'll remember that she got 2 of those charges. There was initially a 3rd charge in there. The grand jury agreed on those 2 charges. And then she went and basically redrafted a new version with those 2 charges that the grand jury did agree to without ever presenting that to the full jury, and just had the foreperson and another grand juror sign off on that. So there's still ample space for motions to dismiss to arise. But I just want to add, this is not a full victory for the Comey team or the James team, because in every single one of these motions to dismiss that they filed, they have asked for these cases to be dismissed with prejudice, meaning that they cannot bring these cases again. But this one right here, both of these have been dismissed without prejudice.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. If from what we've seen from the Department of Justice, from what we've heard from Pam Bondi, this isn't the end at all. So we're going to be hearing about James Comey and Letitia James more. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Wild stuff, man. Appreciate y'all. And Les Cleaver up in here dropping the super chat. Oh my goodness. What did he say? With the 5 bomb, he says, praise God, Fani takes a big goose egg. Sadly, Fulton County gets punished on the taxes. For you all, God bless you. Thank you to Les Cleaver, man. Thank you for the love and support. Hopefully you're enjoying your time off, Les Cleaver. One of the hardest working guys in the community, man. He goes crazy. He said, I figured Comey would probably walk with Letitia James. James had a good chance of going down, and I'm sure she will. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there, especially when it comes to the Letitia James indictment. This isn't the last we're going to hear about Letitia James. And as long as they get their ducks in a row with their U.S. attorney indicting this, they could be back. So we'll see what happens with the appeal. They're not done fighting. Nothing happens with the appeal. Then maybe they're going to be able to refile these charges since it was dismissed without prejudice. Excuse me. All right, so let's keep it moving. We got a couple other topics we want to get to. And by a couple, I mean multiple other topics. So y'all hang in here. Again, thank you to everybody who's liked the video. Over 500 of you have liked the video, so nearly at 100%. If y'all could, please make sure that y'all like the video on your way in. All right, likes are free, y'all. I would appreciate it. It helps out a lot. Just click the like. It's free. All right, so let me see if I can find James Comey. I don't think we have a picture of James Comey in here, so we'll just put 45, 47 up in the building because they are not done fighting. James Comey, of course, he speaks out and is about to speak out about what happened. And here we go. Even though James Comey just took a slight win against the Department of Justice and some would say President Trump, he had a lot to say when it comes to what he's going to see moving forward. I think he believes the fight is not over from him, which I would agree with. And then we're going to hear from what could potentially happen moving forward with this entire indictment, because again, we have the evidence, we have the transcripts, we have the person number 2, as was mentioned in James Comey's indictment, that said what James Comey said in front of the Senate was a lie, and he needs to be held accountable. Let's see what he has to say.
Case against me, which was a prosecution based on
FBI Director Jim Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James have been dismissed by a federal judge yesterday. District Judge Cameron Curry deeming U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed, rendering the indictments as defective. The fired FBI director spoke out after the decision.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence, and a reflection of what the Department of Justice has become under Donald Trump, which is heartbreaking. This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude's going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary. It's time to stand up and show the fools who would frighten us, who would divide us, that we're made of stronger stuff, that we believe in the rule of law.
Letitia James saying this in a statement: I am heartened by today's victory and grateful for the prayers and support I have received from around the country. I remain fearless in the face of these baseless charges as I continue fighting for New Yorkers every single day. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi also speaking out, saying that the DOJ will take all available legal action after the decisions, including an immediate appeal. The White House says, quote, the facts of the indictment against Comey and James have not changed, and this will not be the final word on this matter. Here's the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, yesterday.
We believe the attorney in this case, Lindsay Halligan, is not only extremely qualified for this position, but she was, in fact, legally appointed. And I know the Department of Justice will be appealing this in very short order. So maybe James Comey should pump the brakes on his victory lap.
Uh-oh. Dang,
I
they
spoke
said
with
we're not
Article
done,
3
James.
Project President Mike Davis on Sunday Morning Futures ahead of this decision on the evidence in the case against Comey. Watch this.
Lindsay Halligan has shown time and time again that she has overwhelming evidence that James Comey lied to Congress about his involvement in Crossfire Hurricane, the biggest scandal in American history. We've seen the evidence. She's produced it in response to James Comey's various motions to try to derail this prosecution. The evidence is overwhelming, but we do have Democrat judges in this courthouse in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., who seem to be going out of their way to protect James Comey and to try to kick this case.
Uh-oh.
Joining me now is former federal prosecutor Jonathan Fahey. Jonathan, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Now, these cases were dismissed without prejudice, meaning that they can be filed again. We expect them to be filed again. What's your reaction?
I think the comment about James Comey should pump the brakes is exactly right. It's really too early for them to
said, chill out. This is Fox
football
now.
on the dismissal, both James and Comey. And it's important to know that Judge didn't dismiss the cases because they found that they were politically motivated or lacked merit. It was just simply a technicality as to the appointment of Lindsay Halligan, whether this 6-month period of time for an interim appointment had lapsed. So it had nothing to do with the merits. But what's interesting is the Trump administration has two avenues to pursue here. They can just simply re-indict the cases, or they can appeal this issue. And the interesting thing about that is, even if the Trump administration loses on appeal, they can still re-indict the cases. So when James Comey says the cases are over, that's not correct at all. And I think maybe he's referring to the statute of limitations ending. But again, there's another federal statute, 18 U.S.C., I think it's 3288, that says if an indictment's dismissed, there's a 6-month extension on the statute of limitations to indict a case. So this case can be indicted either way, but I think they will appeal it, and I think they will be successful on the appeal.
Well, I also think that there could be different charges, right, Jonathan? I mean, if you're talking about a new charge of conspiracy, which is something that we've spoken about because it's been really 10 years of attacks against President Trump, does that carry a different statute of limitations than the other charges?
Well, that's an interesting point. And yeah, a conspiracy statute of limitations would end essentially 5 years after the last act of one of the conspirators in furtherance of the conspiracy. So it certainly could be a lot more recent. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And the other thing to keep in mind, typically in a case, the prosecutor, time is not the prosecutor's friend, meaning the defense usually wants to delay things because it benefits them. But in this case, it might actually be different because the prosecutors are new on this case. So it will give them more of an opportunity to investigate not only the current charges, but like you said, other potential charges. So it's really a very interesting thing. And the most important thing is really there's this constitutional aspect of this as to how appointments are made, whether or not district judges have more authority to appoint prosecutors and U.S. attorneys than the president of the United States. And I think that part of the statute is going to get a hard look from the Supreme Court because it really essentially says a Democratic senator can refuse to blue slip appointees, and then it reverts to district judges appointing members of the executive branch, which really doesn't make any sense at all. So there's so many interesting things, but the bottom line is the case goes on against both James and Comey and has nothing to do with whether or not Comey lied to Congress or whether James committed mortgage fraud. Nobody's weighed in on either of those issues yet.
So how long?
Yeah, again, but the judge, if the judge wanted to say something when this was dismissed, they could have. They could have said, yeah, this is dismissed based on Lindsay Halligan not being lawfully appointed. And also, Letitia James, she didn't lie. These claims were baseless. I reviewed everything. James Comey, he didn't lie either. And this should be dismissed with prejudice. So now we're in a situation where you see they may have a good chance at an appeal. And even if they don't appeal, they're going to be able to move forward and do this again if they see fit, which I think they will. Let me know what y'all think.
How long do you expect before the appeal happens? And, you know, it's interesting to hear Jim Comey say, look, I'm innocent. I mean, what is he saying he's innocent for? He's innocent. In other words, he didn't lie to Congress under oath. I mean, she's got detailed information about that one. Or he didn't pursue a story against President Trump, Russia collusion that he knew was false. I mean, what is he saying he's innocent to?
That's an interesting point, because if he's innocent of the core allegations, whether or not he told the truth or not to Congress, it's interesting that they are pursuing all these technical defenses. Not that they shouldn't and don't have a right to, but that's not what happened here. And this impression that's being out there that somehow a judge ruled on the merits is not true. But yeah, how long will this take? It's really up to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals how quickly to take this up. It could be very quickly. It could be months, probably 6 months or so that this could be dormant.
All right, John.
All right, let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Does James Comey need to pump the brakes? Letitia James is quiet. I definitely feel like we're going to hear something from her soon, so she went on an entire press run asking for this and really being the main voice behind this getting dismissed. So make sure y'all stay tuned for that. Let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat. Man, oh man, we've got, oh my goodness, 12,000 of y'all up in this thing. Lord have mercy. Shout out to everybody just joining us. Where did y'all come from? I guess the turkey hangover is over. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate y'all. Make sure if you're just joining us, like the video on your way in. Likes are free. Helps the channel out a lot. And we've still got a ton to cover today. We're going to be up here cooking for a minute. So make sure y'all stay locked in if you haven't liked the video yet. I appreciate it. And it's free. They said, man, James Comey, you got to chill out, man. We're going to talk about Candace Owens a little bit too. Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, and Turning Point USA. We've been covering that a lot here, and things are heating up. It's starting to get crazy out here. We're going to hear from Pastor. We're going to hear from Officer Tatum. And then, of course, Candace Owens herself, even though she said she's going to be out for a while because there was an alleged attempt on her life, which we'll get into here in a second. Candace Owens has some more beef with someone else over at Turning Point USA. And this situation gets very interesting because Candace Owens, she's been coming out, giving a lot of information about what she was seeing inside of Turning Point USA, questions she wanted answered, and recently talking about the alleged assassination hit that's out on her life. So she said she's going to take a step back for a little while. She's taking a break maybe for the rest of the week. And then she'll come back and hopefully bring us some more news and some more updates. But this pastor representing or speaking at a Turning Point USA event had this to say. Check this out. And shout out to John Henry for posting this over on X. He said, breaking, at an official Turning Point USA event, featured speaker, Pastor John, I'm not even going to try and say his last name, called Candace Owens evil and demonic, and even demanded a pause for it. He also urged Candace Owens' husband to stop his wife. Oh my goodness. We're going to go ahead and get into it. Y'all check this out and see what this man had to say about Candace Owens here. And let me know in the comments if y'all think he's right or if this is just out of bounds. Oh, I got to unmute this. Give me 1 second. Boom. Here we go. What's the pastor have to say?
So contrary to what Candace Owens is saying, who's spending her time trying to tear down the legacy of Charlie Kirk,
no,
fighting against Erica Kirk, his wife. I mean, you have to be cruel and demonic to insinuate the things that she has insinuated over the past several weeks. She's evil. That's what it is. And a big hand clap goes there. Don't get shy on me tonight. I ain't the one. I came too far to play around.
What? Dude, come on, man. Candace Owens has been the only one asking questions about the stuff that the large majority of us feel doesn't make sense. To say that's evil, a search for the truth is evil? Come on, Pastor. And why you would use your platform to do this is crazy.
Don't get shy on me tonight. I ain't the one. I came too far to play around.
Jeez.
It's evil. It's corrupt. It should not take place. She sounds like a jaded person who wish they were in the role that Charlie Kirk's wife is in, but she isn't.
Dang, this is the second time we're hearing this. First, Frank Turek said it, using it as a hypothetical, using it as an example, saying he thinks Candace Owens is jealous of Erica Kirk. Now we have the pastor here saying that. I don't know. There must be talk going around Turning Point USA that Candace Owens wanted to be maybe Candace Kirk.
Sounds like a jaded person who wish they were in the role that Charlie Kirk's wife is in, but she isn't. And so therefore she seeks to tear down his legacy. And at some point, her husband is going to have to walk into that podcast room and start unplugging cords. I mean, by now I would have already done it if it was my wife. I'm yanking cords. I'm shutting down the camera, shut down the ATEM. Sweetie, get up, get out of this room, and can you please help out with the kids? Because this is a dastardly deed that is being done. I thought that the greatest foe that we would have to contend with after the assassination of Charlie Kirk would be the left. But sadly, it's friendly fire from the right. I'm moving on.
Wow, dang. There's a lot here. I think this pastor is out of bounds. And I think what he's saying is totally and completely wrong and false. Candace Owens, this entire time, has been championing and pushing for finding out the truth. She wants to know what the truth is. She wants to know why this isn't making sense, why things aren't adding up. And for this man, a pastor, to get up there and say something about Candace Owens' husband, man, shoot. If that were, I'm not going to say if that were me, but I think this is out of bounds. It's disrespectful. And Candace Owens, on her search for the truth, is asking questions that I believe we all have. She's asking questions and seeing things that don't make sense to a lot of us. And now she has an assassination attempt allegedly on her own life and had one before, which Turning Point USA actually backed up. So for him to go this far and say this about Candace Owens, I think is way out of bounds. I want to know what y'all think, because the pastor, the good pastor, doubled down. Shout out to John K.A. What did he say? He said, I stand by every word I said in this clip. Where was the Bible in that, Pastor? While preaching in Washington State, there's a difference between investigating and spreading slanderous what does he say? Surmising, I guess is what he's saying, cloaked as factual truth. The Bible speaks against slander, false accusers, and sowing seeds of discord. I'm sticking with the Bible. Charlie would have done the same thing. Sadly, he can't. Galatians 4:16 says, Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? What? That's what Candace is looking for. What is this pastor saying? A lot of people are mad at him. This pastor say this person say you're disgusting. But he's out here on his public platform telling a man what he needs to do with his wife. That's kind of crazy. And then, of course, Candace Owens had to respond to this. Shout out to Candace. She said, Turning Point USA, Faith coming to a city near you. God wants you to clap for me. Yeah, that was weird too. He said, y'all clap and make me happy. I didn't like this at all. And I thought it was strange. And also, we have Officer Tatum was speaking out on this as well. If you don't know Officer Tatum and follow his content, he does a great job with the show. He's actually done some work with Turning Point USA as well. And he had a lot to say when it came to Candace Owens and how she was doing investigating and what she was pointing out that was happening, calling out Turning Point USA. And he is actually close friends, according to him, with Candace Owens. And he's disagreed with a lot of what she says, but he had to say this. He says, here's the full video of when I talked about Candace Owens, how she's been conducting herself and what she's saying about the attempt on her life. That's apparently imminent from what Candace Owens says. And he says this, well, people may not realize Candace Owens is not a social media influencer to me. Candace Owens is still a really good friend of mine. I still love her to death. Oh man, it's a weird way to put it right now. Even though we disagree on a few things. I know she disagrees with me. We disagree. Friends can disagree. Me and my wife disagree. I'm not going to divorce my wife. That's a fair point. And Candace and I disagree. She's not going to stop being my friend, even though I don't like some of the stuff that she says, is what I think he meant to say. And she doesn't like the stuff that I say. But anyway, this is bigger. This is bigger than Israel and all of the stuff. If somebody's trying to kill Candace, that's a problem to me. Now, I will say this because I'm not verified. I don't have any verifiable evidence. Candace didn't show me verifiable evidence, but she did say that she had it. And she said she sent it to certain people and she named their names. Let's see what Officer Tatum had to say here about
Hey,
Candace.
y'all, I had to text Candace Owens about this. The assassination attempt on her life is insane.
I have to tell you guys, in my gut of guts, there is something unbelievably, I just look at Brigitte Macron and I am telling you, you are looking at an utter psychopath in my view. There is something dark. There is something deep there. I see it in the eyes, in the performance of this all, that the response in France has been to start to harass people who came out and tried to tell the story, to effectively ruin their lives, to go after their finances, to debank them. The strange circumstances of some people who have tried to touch this story, and we've covered this also in our series, that wound up dead.
It doesn't matter right, wrong, or indifferent. They have to investigate this. They have to investigate this. And I think that if it is found to be true and the proof prevails, which I'm convinced, after talking to Candace and the stuff that we talked about, I'm convinced, then that means that there should be dire consequences for the French government and whoever else was involved, the Macrons or whatever, dire consequences. Like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you get notifications anytime I go live. I'll make a video, make sure you still subscribe to this channel. And also, if you want to message me, you have comments, you have questions, anything, send it to me at Brandon@freedomchat.com, Brandon@freedomchat.com. Let's get into this. Let's talk about Candace Owens. People have been crying for me to talk about Candace Owens every day of the week. When are you going to talk about Candace Owens? When are you going to talk about Candace Owens? Well, people may not realize Candace Owens is not a social media influencer to me. Candace Owens is still a really good friend of mine. I still love her to death. Even though we disagree on a few things, I know she disagrees with me. We disagree. Friends can disagree. Me and my wife disagree. I'm not going to divorce my wife. And Candace and I disagree. She's not going to stop being my friend, even though I don't like some stuff that she say, and she don't like stuff that I say. But anyway, this is bigger than
perspective.
Israel and all of this stuff. If somebody trying to kill Candace, that's a problem to me. That is a crazy problem to me. And this is not something I just read on the internet, because I text Candace, because I got her number. I talked to Candace. I text her. I said, well, that's crazy. I'm praying for you, sis. What is going on here? And she pretty much told me, and I'm not going to say what our private message was, but she pretty much alluded to the fact that she got evidence that
she brings the receipts.
They did some little shenanigans over there in France, and they hired somebody to kill her.
Dang.
Now, am I shocked that somebody would hire somebody to kill Candace or anybody that's extremely popular? I'm not shocked. They tried to kill Trump. They killed Charlie. And I would assume that people that don't like her, she's talking about Bridget Macron got a wang, and they probably didn't like it. This video is brought to you by Tatum Store.
All right, shout out to Officer Tatum. We're not going to get into that whole first lady, quote unquote, of France thing. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. Seeing a lot of information come out about Candace Owens, and we're going to keep covering it here. Candace will be back, as she says, next week. Y'all go over there and support her. I want to support anybody who's on the quest for truth, and we're going to continue to promote it here because a lot of what we're hearing from the federal government, from the local police there in Utah, doesn't make sense. So we'll have to wait and see what the trial shows if we get to that point. Let me know what y'all think in the comments in the chat. Hey, shout out to Bridget. Yo, man, these guys, they be out here wilding. That's hilarious, though. We still got 12,000 of y'all in here showing love. Thank y'all for the support. We still got a lot to get to. And I see y'all. I do need to shout out a couple super chats as well. We've got, where did he go? Les Cleaver in here just dropped the 10 bomb. Oh my goodness. He says, I'm blessed to be here, and I pray we all are grateful for the blessing we have received and the people we are with and those we are about to meet. Love your neighbors as we love ourselves. Amen. Shout out to Les Cleaver. Thank you for the support. I appreciate it, man. He's in here supporting and does not miss. Working hard, on vacation, whatever. He's in here showing love. Thank you, Les Cleaver, for being a consistent supporter. I appreciate you as always. And your great insights and blessings too. Also, shout out to Amy for dropping the super sticker. She's reminding me that it's getting close to lunchtime. I can't do anything about it. We got too much to cover on the show. But shout out to Amy, and also reminding me she's got the cakiest cake in the world, which is true. Shout out to Amy with the cake, and thank you for the super chat and love. Amy's reminding y'all in the chat to like the video if you haven't yet. Please make sure y'all like the video. Likes are free. All right, I know y'all can do it. There's over 500 of you that have done it. So just make sure you take a second, like the video, because likes are absolutely free and it takes less than a second for you to do. Now let's get into talking about what's going on with TMZ and this whole David situation. Now I'll give you guys a little bit of an update if you haven't been following what's been going on here. When it comes to David and Celeste Rivas, we've been hearing an abundance of information, not only from mainstream media, but from TMZ specifically when it comes to what happened to Celeste's body, David being named as a suspect, allegedly the LAPD figuring out and finding out that there was another suspect, a second suspect involved in this potentially. And then TMZ recently came out. They were putting out reports about Celeste's bodies being possibly frozen when it was placed in the car. And then later on, it unfroze and it was decomposed, and that's why the ME and the medical examiner are having a hard time figuring out the cause of death. The LAPD came and spoke out against TMZ, and they said, listen, y'all have got the facts wrong. Whatever you're saying, all this information that you're getting, you've got it wrong. You need to stop talking about it. Well, TMZ, of course, was not going to back down from that and said, okay, that's how things are going to go. We're going to talk about it. And we're going to talk about our sources. Check this out.
An LAPD captain is disputing part of a story that we broke over the weekend. A story about David, the singer David, and the body that was found in his Tesla, that body of Celeste Rivas. Mm-hmm. And the part of our story that we broke over the weekend was that, that the remains of Celeste were partially frozen when they were found in the Tesla. This was back in early September, first week in September, when they discovered this when David's car had been towed to an LA tow yard. Well, the LAPD captain is saying that the body was not frozen.
They're saying TMZ lied.
Herein lies the issue. We have a very well-connected source connected to the medical examiner, the LA County medical examiner, which currently has the body. And that source has doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and sextupled down, actually, now, saying that the body was indeed partially frozen when it was received by law enforcement.
All right, so again, we have a game here of who's lying. This is going to be one of the craziest ones I've seen so far, but I have to ask, who do y'all think is telling the truth? Is LAPD telling the truth, or is TMZ telling the truth? I know this is probably a near impossible situation and impossible to give an answer to, but we've got to figure it out, because somebody is hiding something, and somebody is either not being accurate, leaving out information intentionally. We got to figure out what's going on, because TMZ, they might have to reveal their source here as who their source is, which I know they won't, because why would the LAPD say something this so simple like this is not true? Also, why would TMZ report on something that is not true? Doesn't make any sense.
So that's kind of interesting, but the medical examiner is just telling a different story, or at least the sources we have, and we have sources in all camps in this. There's a conflict here.
We've heard that there's been this conflict between LAPD and the medical examiner.
There's been tension for several years, but this is kind of interesting. One of the documents at the LA County Medical Examiner's office has an interesting statement. This has to do with trying to fingerprint Celeste's body. It says, the decedent was not live scanned due to waterlogged fingers. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Right. Why would the fingers
be waterlogged?
Well, certainly if the body had been frozen for quite some time and then is sitting in a bag in this Tesla out in the blazing hot summer sun, yeah, you would imagine that there's going to be some water in that bag.
So you've got to kind of like look at the big picture here. So we told you that even though there has not been a cause or manner of death determined by the medical examiner, and there may not be because of the state of the body, the LAPD is operating under the assumption that this is a homicide and that David is a suspect. And there is an accomplice, they believe, somebody who helped dismember the body. Now, there is a mysterious trip that becomes really important in this case, we're told, that David took to Santa Barbara in the spring of this year. In the middle of the night in a remote area of Santa Barbara County, spent several hours there. We are told the following, that and this is based on sources, that the body wasn't buried, but the strong insinuation that we got was that's where it was dismembered. So what happened to the body between the spring, if this is true, between the spring of this year and September, when the body was discovered in the car?
Right. I mean, if this just a theory, I think that it would make sense if they went there just to not have a mess, and that's when they dismembered it, and then it was in a freezer for a long period of time, and then
it almost points to it must have been frozen. And I understand the LAPD captain is disputing this, but our sources
why would he do that?
100% it was frozen, and that completely makes sense. Partially frozen when the body came to the ME's office.
It also makes sense with the state of decomposition, right? I mean, from spring to when it's discovered in September, when the body is discovered, they say it's in a state of decomposition, but the waterlogging, all that stuff indicates frozen at some point, whether frozen when they actually pull it out or not, because the state of decomposition of a human body from the spring to the summer would be really pronounced. You wouldn't see fingers and things like that, even to live scan in the first place.
I don't even want to go as far as saying, yeah, we know it's frozen, because we don't. This is what we're
being told.
We've got sources, in the investigation, and we have told you appropriately, I believe, what the nature of our source is in connection to this. But I don't know how you put the dots together, connect the dots of spring, say it's April, May, June, July, August.
Got more
That's
pictures of
4
Celeste,
months.
too.
What happened to the body during those 4 months?
By the way, the 4 warmest months
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Southern California.
In Southern California.
And it would start to smell. The fact that
The odor was there, though, according to the toe shop.
The odor was
right,
there.
no, at the toe shop.
The
Right,
odor was there.
at the toe shop, yeah. Right, but I think, remember how long the Tesla was parked on the street? I think that it would have started emitting some sort of, I mean, I'm not a scientist, but some sort of smell before it was eventually towed away.
And obviously, the one thing we can't explain is how does the body end up in that car? How does the body end up
and why?
in the Tesla?
How?
Find out.
I mean, obviously, someone placed it there, but we can't.
It doesn't
Why
make-
they would have done it?
It's really dumb.
And the body on top of that was also a process. It was dismembered. There's a lot of factors that go into complicating this issue a lot, right? There's the potential freezing. There's the parts all over the place. It's a very, very sad story. At the end of the day, some of these you see like what belongings she had, what she was wearing, things like that.
Right.
So, the one thing that I was told by one of the sources is don't necessarily use logic to try to understand this.
That keeps ringing in my head. I remember when you said that, and it's been ringing in my head ever since finding out that the source said that the body was partially frozen. Then that leads me to why was it placed in this car? And I just kept hearing that in my head that a lot of this, there's part of this that is not going to make sense.
Right.
Hi, my name is
Interesting. So let me know what y'all think about this so far. Who's telling the truth here? TMZ seems like they have several sources connected to each side. And honestly, we're at a point now to where the medical examiner and the police department aren't even on the same page. The medical examiner is saying, hey, I want to tell you guys and give you guys this information, but I can't because now we have an order that says we can't give you the information to be transparent. The LAPD said, let us worry about it. Let us handle this. Wait until the news comes out. We're not going to tell you anything else. And what you're hearing in the reports is wrong. Then we have TMZ saying, nope, we have sources close to both sides of this. And that's why we're reporting what we're reporting. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. We've got more information coming up for you in the next video as well. And shout out to the gang. I see y'all in here, man. Woo-wee, who's lying? I don't know why LAPD, this is just, it's so weird to me. It's so weird because it seems like they're somewhat dragging their feet with an arrest, and it all seems to be pointing to the medical examiner's office, and everything that TMZ is reporting when it comes to the condition of the body makes sense because that's why the medical examiner would be having issues finding out and figuring out the cause of death. So why is that the case? Why are we having that type of situation? I don't know. I don't get this at all. One day they say the body was frozen and dismembered. The next day they say it wasn't. Freezing a body sounds like something straight out of a movie. I don't think it is likely to happen, but could I be wrong? I mean, we're going to have to wait and see, I guess, until this goes to trial, if it does, because they're seeming like they don't even know who was involved. Shout out to all 12,000 of you that are in the building. Thank you for being here. It sounds like somebody tampered with the body. Oh, they absolutely did. There's no question about that. And we've still got more David information. We're going to give you guys an update here as well, because things when it comes to David are about to get even more weird, because now not only are we finding out that David is a suspect in the Celeste Rivas investigation, but there's multiple other people involved and suspects in this Celeste Rivas situation. And I called this the last time we covered this topic. We have to have the information from the Tesla now, because that's the only way they would be able to find out David taking this trip, or they got that information from his phone, which is highly unlikely. If he took that trip, that it would be in his phone. It would be in his phone information. So now we're finding out they do have the information from the Tesla, but the judge doesn't want that to be revealed to the public. So let's go ahead and get into it here. See what we've got from Court TV when it comes to this situation with the David investigation and the judge making this new, somewhat shocking ruling.
David, a lot of conflicting information about him and the body found in his Tesla. That's what's trending in true crime this morning, and whether the remains of 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez were discovered partially frozen or not. The Los Angeles police saying now it's not true. Adding, really? Frozen? How do you think she was in there for weeks and weeks in the blazing Southern California summer sun. Of course, her body was not frozen. That's what the LAPD is now saying. Court order requested by the LAPD, though, has halted the release of all records and details associated with her death. Singer David has been identified as a potential suspect. There's word of another possible unidentified second suspect. Multiple sources say David is no longer cooperating with authorities, but no arrests have been made. So we're asking why all the conflicting information, and wouldn't it just be easier to release the official information to stop the rumors and find out exactly what happened to Celeste? Well, attorneys Franz Borchardt, Casey Early, and law enforcement expert Sonny Slaughter still here. Sonny, start with you on this. The investigation, it's long. On one end, no one's going anywhere. The body decomposed. What do you think's happening here, and what are the hurdles for the LAPD in terms of figuring out what happened?
You know, I think this case is so interesting. But I think that is really important, as much as we all want the information, in order to protect the integrity of the investigation, which is still ongoing, that they need to tamper down on the release of any information because it can interfere with the investigative process. While I'm a proponent of sharing information with the public for transparency, I am also a staunch proponent of ensuring that law enforcement is doing everything that they must do and can do to get the right person, because far too often there's questions about whether the person that they have in custody is the right person. And if we don't protect the integrity of the investigation, they can't ensure that they have everything that they need, and then they come up against someone like me behind the scenes saying, you didn't do this right, and that's why it's falling apart. So while we want information, they need to hold it close to the vest in order to get the right information and the right culprits of this particular crime.
The problem, of course, with a high-profile case like this one is the wrong information gets out into the public sphere. We've got conflicting information basically from the beginning. Frozen body, that was out there. That was floated out there. We also had these reports that she was dismembered or decapitated. Well, that's not clear anymore. And then David's cooperation. At first, David's people came out right away. Oh, yes, cooperate, doing everything we can. And now we're hearing, again, from whispers out of the LAPD sources, is that no, he's not. He's not cooperating at all. And so this.
And he also hired a very, very popular high-level defense attorney, too.
Is an issue, I would think, in a high-profile case, Casey, because if I'm the family and I'm thinking, what, she was frozen and she was decapitated and her arms and legs were possibly taken off, it's horrifying. So they want to do some damage control on one end. On the other hand, they're shutting down the medical examiner, don't want anything released. Your thoughts overall on how they're handling it and how tricky it is, really, this tightrope?
Yeah, I mean, there is several different types of information that's coming out that is conflicted. And I think that this is the law enforcement trying to give information to the public, but also continue their investigation. I mean, this case is filled with questions, but there's also some obvious things that even the public can see. We knew that he had some involvement, right? But typically in cases like this, and I deal with murder cases all the time, what law enforcement or even the state will do is take the weakest link. So now there is reports that there was a second possible suspect that assisted with dismembering or transporting the body. So maybe there's a possibility later on down the road when charges are formally filed that they'll take that weakest link and possibly use him to testify against David, who we all know is the prime suspect in this case. We know that there could have been a possible relationship. We know the matching tattoos and the possible motive. But in this case, there's a possibility that the second suspect may testify against him and then be charged with accessory after the fact. But again, this is typical with high-profile cases. You want to give some information to the public, but the downfall is if it's still an ongoing investigation, typically that changes. So this is typical.
Franz, how important is the fact that her body was in that frunk, as they call it, the front part of that Tesla, for weeks and weeks and decomposed to the point where This may be a situation where they don't know the cause of death. They don't have enough from her remains to really build a murder case, if indeed that's what they believe happened. But because if you think of it, could have been a drug overdose, getting rid of the body, could have been a myriad of things. How difficult might this case be if and when it enters a courtroom?
I think it becomes difficult to convict for a murder if you can't determine what the cause of death is. It doesn't necessarily mean you can't pursue some kind of wrong behavior. Look, there's a phrase, possession is 9/10 of the law. Where's the body? If the body's in your trunk, you've got an issue. And just because they haven't moved on him yet doesn't mean they won't move on him. But bigger picture is if they can't determine the cause of death, that's going to be a big problem. But also the other piece is, Ted, this is not just a homicide. There are other major red flag questions. How old is she? What was she doing where she was? These are questions that are going to possibly leave prosecutors some wiggle room on what they can decide to pursue and when they decide to pursue it.
Absolutely. And this is an up-and-coming artist who was really taking off. And there were rumors, online that this was an inappropriate relationship. We're talking about a 14-year-old girl involved possibly with this singer. Sonny, getting someone to crack, I would think, is massive in a case like this, and time is on investigators' side.
You're absolutely right. They need the right person. They need them to be skillful in their questioning and technique. And I think they're going to take as much time as they need to get it, if they want to get it done right. And as Franz just said, there are some underlining things. Is she the only one? And I'm talking about not necessarily that's deceased, but potential for other individuals who are young, who are in this orbit. Any other sexual abuse, any other trauma? What's going on around here?
That's the first time I've heard that question asked. Was she the only one? I don't know about that one. That seems kind of a little bit of a reach, but I guess crazier things have happened. It seemed like David, this was a one-off situation to me from the evidence we've seen so far. David had a long-term relationship with Celeste. They were together. She would leave home, come back, leave home, come back. Is it possible? Sure. Is it likely? We'll have to wait and see. Let me know what y'all think in the comments and in the chat. Wow, we still got 12,000 of y'all folks in here. Shout out to everybody in the building. This is we've got a lot of questions when it comes to what's going on with David. Again, I don't know that time is on the prosecution's side because they still have to completely prove this case. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that David was the one that ended Celeste's life. Unless you're just going to get him for moving a body, then okay, maybe I guess that's something that you could do, but still you have to prove that it was him. And other than David taking that trip out to the desert, what else do you really have? We'll have to wait and see during this investigation. And now, again, when we talk about charges, we've got some more update and more news from TMZ on this David situation. So now that we've got all this updated information about David and Celeste, that the LAPD is denying a lot of the facts that TMZ is reporting, we're now hearing that a grand jury is going to indict somebody in this. We don't know if it's David. We don't know if it's David and another person, but there are reports that David is about to be indicted or a grand jury is looking at the facts of this case. So we may have a court date soon. Check this out from TMZ, and I want to know what y'all think about this in the comments and in the chat too.
In the case involving the death of Celeste Rivas. And this is a really interesting twist. And underlying it all is what I believe is a war between the LAPD and the LA County Medical Examiner.
Yep.
So here's what happened.
I agree.
The LA Times got hold of a petition that the LAPD filed asking to block the medical examiner from releasing any information about the death of Celeste Rivas.
We talked about this.
This is highly unusual. And as a matter of fact, the LAPD tried this back in September, And the judge in that case said, there's no basis for doing that the LAPD didn't make a case. Well, they went back again, apparently a few days ago, and they asked again, seal all the information that the medical examiner has, and that judge did it. And the medical examiner was pissed and came out with a statement saying it's highly unusual. They believe in transparency, obviously a problem. The LA Times has seen that petition. The petition itself is sealed. So you can't even see the LAPD applying to get the order. It's all sealed.
Crazy.
The LA Times, they say they've seen the petition, and in it, it says that a grand jury was convened in mid-November, just a week or so ago.
Wow.
And it's an investigative grand jury where they can subpoena witnesses and help the LAPD get information. Because think about it. The LAPD calls somebody and says, we want to talk to you. They say no. But if the grand jury subpoenas them, they have to come and they have to testify. So that's why law enforcement uses these grand juries. So this is an investigative grand jury. It met for a couple of days. We don't know if it's still in force. My guess would be it probably is, because the LAPD is looking at this, trying to get information. And a lot of people, when LAPD calls, says, we don't want to talk. But they have to if it's a grand jury.
Yep.
So this gets back to David. We told you that David, even though nothing is formal, the LAPD is viewing him as a suspect in a homicide. They believe it's a homicide, even though the medical examiner hasn't yet said that, and we're told they may never be able to because of the condition of her body. We also, you may know, reported a story over the weekend that we have been told by sources that her body was partially frozen. The captain of the LAPD came out and said that's not true. We went back to our source connected to the medical examiner, and they tripled, quadrupled, sextupled down and said it was partially frozen. Interesting that her fingers were so waterlogged they couldn't get a fingerprint off of it. This is direct from the medical examiner's documents. It says that they couldn't get that fingerprint because of waterlogged fingers. So that is the current state of this case. To summarize, the LAPD is clearly in the throes of an investigation. They're using the grand jury to get witnesses, presumably, to talk that they otherwise could not get to speak to them. David, we're told, is a suspect. We're told there is a second suspect that has something to do with the dismemberment of Celeste's body. There is a huge conflict between the medical examiner and the LAPD. Lauren Conlin from LA Magazine would also like to chime in. But before she does, would you like to subscribe?
I want to echo a couple things that Harvey said here. First and foremost, I have said from the start, it seems like LAPD and the medical examiner's office are completely at odds here. I spoke to a forensic death investigator the other day, Joseph Scott Morgan, about the possibility of Celeste's body being frozen at one point. Not being frozen upon discovery, but at one point. Now, what he said was a medical examiner would be able to tell based on doing tests with the tissue. So they would be able to see if the body had thawed, had unthawed through microscopic cellular tissue. I mean, his words, not mine. But when TMZ got this leak from a source close to the medical examiner's office, my understanding was that testing had been done. It had been done to the point that the LAPD deemed this a homicide or a murder investigation, although they haven't come right out and said this. This was reported by the LA Times based on the petition they obtained by the LAPD blocking the medical examiner from releasing the death records. They saw this information that they are treating this like a homicide. So again, in my opinion, that came from the medical examiner's findings that they don't want out there. They do not want people like us speculating what possibly could have happened to Celeste and who was involved, because they don't want to, I guess, hinder their investigation. Although, I mean, at this point, there's tons of speculation, but I do believe that the theory of her body being frozen at one point is correct based on that. Now, just piggybacking off of this, on that petition to block the records from being released, the LA Times said they saw a grand jury number, which sort of got them thinking, okay, is a grand jury being convened? And yes, as Harvey said, it's an investigative grand jury. So these types of grand juries could take a really long time. I mean, we're talking months here. It's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fast. However, this is a step in the right direction. The investigative grand juries are used for complex cases, cases where police believe that a crime has been committed, but they don't necessarily have all of the details. They don't have all of the witnesses. They don't have all of the evidence. And with the investigative grand jury, they're going to be able to recommend proper subpoenas. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there is video surveillance, and this is hypothetical, video surveillance of somebody moving that Tesla at the end of July. Now, let's say there are rumors, and I don't know if the rumors are true or not, but that this person who moved the Tesla is not in the country. Well, police don't have the ability to say, hey, get back to the U.S. We want to talk to you.
They can't go get them.
They can't do that unless a subpoena comes from a grand jury. So this type of grand jury is very important to get more information to eventually make an arrest in the case. So I'm happy at this point. I mean, I think, again, that things are progressing, although they're progressing slowly. But the LAPD has made it very clear that they do not want any information out there. I mean,
why?
Their hand was forced. They finally made their second statement on November 25th, where they said, oh, and this is actually really interesting. What they said was, and this is different from what they had originally told People magazine. I believe it was Captain Scott Williams who told People magazine, you know, there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery or that she ever was frozen in general. He added that in parentheses. I cited that. In the LAPD statement from November 25th, he said, or the LAPD said, excuse me, they said there is no evidence that she was frozen upon discovery on September 8th, 2025. That's much different than saying that she was never frozen at all, in my opinion. So they put this out in a statement. They also debunked the decapitation, but they also confirmed that the Santa Barbara trip did happen in spring of 2025. TMZ reported that, and that was a great piece of information. They reported that he was in Santa Barbara County very late at night for a few hours, and the LAPD said, yes, this happened, but we don't know if this necessarily has anything to do with the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez or not. I mean, look, they're not going to tell us, of course. We already know that. So, yeah, their hand was forced. They had no choice but to make a statement. And I don't necessarily think that we're going to hear anything else from the police directly unless, again, their hand is forced by the media. So,
yep, I agree 1000%. TMZ has to keep up the great work investigating this. Shout out to Lauren Conlon as well. Y'all go make sure you check her out on X. Has done an amazing job reporting on this. And we have to wait and see. A lot of this isn't adding up as to why the LAPD would be hiding this type of information that's usually readily available in this case. They're moving very slow as well, something we haven't seen from a lot of district attorneys, some things we haven't seen from a lot of police forces. So I want to know what y'all think about this in the comments in the chat. What is happening here with the LAPD? Is there somebody else involved that they're trying to protect? I can't imagine what is going on, because even the medical examiner is upset with how they're handling this. Let me know what y'all think in the comments and in the chat. Wild stuff, man. And y'all still up in here listening? We still got 13,000 of y'all in the building. My gosh, man. Y'all are committed to being here. Thank y'all for the love. Again, I gotta beg y'all, please like the video. About half of you have liked the video, so there's a few of you that have not liked the video yet. So can y'all please make sure you like the video? It's free, helps us out a lot. And let's keep it moving. We've got to get to our next topic, which is about Karen Read. So we've got some Karen Read updates when it comes to this entire Karen Read civil trial. Oh man, I feel bad for Karen Read at this point. Not only because she was just wrongfully indicted in the first place, just because of all this BS that she's having to deal with. So we're going to talk about it here, because now we have some more updates when it comes to Karen Read and this civil case and where it's going to take place. It's looking like the Karen Read case is getting moved to federal court, which means we might not see any of Karen Read until this thing is done, or if it's settled. So we're going to find out more information here about why it's moved. We're actually going to hear from brother counsel, and he's going to explain and give some information as to what that means. And then we can only hope here that we'll still be able to cover some of this, because it's looking like Karen Read is saying that her constitutional rights were violated, and that's why she's bringing this countersuit, which is something that's going to need to be handled in federal court. So let's check this out from News 5 there in Boston, and then we'll hear from brother counsel on some of the reasons why Karen Read's case is going to be moving, and if it's going to stay this way moving forward. Check this out.
News Center 5's David Bienick live in Canton tonight with the possible reasons behind this legal maneuvering. David, good evening.
Ben, good evening to you. Unlike criminal cases, civil lawsuits are not necessarily tied to a specific location. And when it comes to how the outcome of the case can be affected, location can mean a lot. Karen Read filed a lawsuit last week against 8 people, 5 witnesses who were in the house the night John O'Keefe died, and 3 police investigators she says tried to frame her, and in doing so, violated her civil rights.
That is, of course, a federal issue.
And because of that, the defendants in Read's lawsuit have now moved it from the state court in Bristol County to the federal court in Boston. But it might not stay there, says retired Judge Jim Barretto.
And I suspect we'll hear shortly, don't know, of course, that the plaintiffs, Ms. Read and her attorneys, object to this attempt to remove this case.
In their filing, the defendants accuse Read of an ongoing and malicious attempt to evade responsibility for John O'Keefe's death. They say she is smearing and defaming them, and that her lawsuit is a vengeful use of the judicial process.
What would you want to be paid to go through what I've been through?
Read's criminal case ended with her being found not guilty of O'Keefe's death. If her civil case stays in federal court, no cameras will be allowed, and the jury will be drawn from a larger pool of people.
I suspect, and again, it's just my gut feeling, that they want this case in a federal district court, which is far removed from an environment in the county court that they likely see as having been toxic.
Karen Read faces a separate wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of John O'Keefe in Plymouth County Court, and the witnesses that she is suing have threatened to sue her for defamation. Live in Canton, David Bienick, WCVB News Center 5.
And again, those are all threats. We haven't seen anything on that yet. So now that's being moved to federal court. We're going to hear from brother counsel here, and I'll leave a link to this full video in the description for you guys so you can hear a lawyer actually explain it and talk about what this means, Karen Read being moved to federal court, and which parts of it we're actually going to see play out in the state court. I'll leave a link to this. Y'all make sure you go show some love to brother counsel and support him as well. Check this out.
These 2 separate cases, right? We got the case where Karen Read is defending against, and then we have this other case that they filed a separate complaint in, alleging all these civil rights defending against.
Super fast.
We've got these 2 separate cases, right? We got the case where the Karen Read is defending against, and then we have this other case that they filed a separate complaint in, alleging all these civil rights violations against the McCabe's, the Alberts, former Trooper Proctor, should I say, and the Buchanan, etc. So, what happens? Well, the first thing that we have to understand is that once you remove to federal court, the federal court then has jurisdiction over that complaint, over that filing. And therefore, even if you then move to consolidate it in a separate case, well, you're moving in state court to consolidate. The state court does not have jurisdiction anymore over that complaint. So they cannot even order the consolidation anymore. You've got to first get the federal court to remand it back to state court, and then maybe you can move on or proceed with the consolidation. So what I foresee happening is that this issue is going to be moot in the case of Karen Read's wrongful death, right? That was the case where they moved to consolidate. It hasn't even been filed yet. It was served. That's the way it works in Massachusetts. And right now, the state court does not have jurisdiction anymore over that matter. So as far as I see, this is going to proceed the state court where Karen Read is defending herself for the wrongful death. And then there's going to be the separate claim that Karen Read is the plaintiff in, and which there may be some counterclaims against her for defamation, which that's what it seems like from their answer. We'll see if that all happens. But that's how I see this proceeding. The Karen Read proceeding in state court defending herself, which is what we can all see. And the other case where she filed the civil rights complaint, that's going to proceed most likely in federal court, unless for some reason they come up with some reason why they should be remanded back to state court. So we'll see if that gets litigated in the federal courts. But again, the federal courts are a lot more under lock and key. It's hard for us to see everything that's going on in the federal court, and which is why I always believed that the civil case, the defendants are going to want to remove to federal court so they can get out of the public sphere, and it's a little bit more under lock and key. It's not as transparent. We can't see everything that's going on in court. They don't allow cameras in there, et cetera, et cetera. We've been through that already before. So let's pull up the notice of removal and some very feisty language in here. So let's get started. Here we go. This was the notice of filing the removal. Let me just pull it up on my side also over here. All right. So please take notice that Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, and Brian Higgins. So that's not all the defendants. If you take a look, let's see. There's many more defendants here. Michael Proctor, Sergeant Yuri Buchanan, Lieutenant Brian Tully. So what about those people? So we're going to have to see if the complaint addresses that. I'm sorry, if this notice of removal addresses that. Because, right, we know that there has to be unanimity when it comes to removing to federal court. So we'll see what happens. Every single party has to consent. So let's see if they address that in this notice of removal. So again, please take notice that Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, and Brian Higgins have on this date filed a notice of removal in the United States District Court for the District of Massachusetts, pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1446. A copy of the notice of removal and all accompanying documents is attached hereto as Exhibit A. Moving right along.
And I'm going to leave a link to this in the description again for y'all to go check out the full explanation from Brother Counsel. But it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out moving forward, because it now makes sense why there's a lot of money being asked for, because if you're dividing this, you're going to be fighting this in two separate courts. This is going to cost so much money, so much time. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody settles, because I know they don't want to fight this. Also, moving forward, when it comes to some evidence with Karen Read, Boston 25 has this update when it comes to Karen Read's phones and what's the deal with her getting her phone.
A matter of Karen Read being acquitted.
Here we go.
What happened to the phone state police took from Karen Read nearly 2 years ago? It's a question 25 Investigates has been asking. Investigative reporter Ted Daniel found a battle over the phones behind the scenes.
As we've been reporting, the Massachusetts State Police has 2 iPhones belonging to Karen Read. A special prosecutor wants to search them for evidence that she plotted with Aiden Carney, a.k.a. Turtle Boy, to intimidate people who testified against her in her murder case. For the first time, we're hearing from both sides.
Do you believe that the special prosecutor has the blessing of the DA's office to do this?
I expect that he has the direction of the DA's office to do this.
Attorney Benjamin Herbalist joined Karen Read's legal team about a month ago. This is his take on why Special Prosecutor Robert Cosgrove won't return her phones.
I think it's a matter of Karen Read being acquitted for murder, and there's still so much pressure from one side on the DA's office to get her for something.
Cosgrove responded to us by email. He says the phones were seized prior to Read's first trial in a related but separate witness intimidation probe.
John O'Keefe was phone number 1 of a guy named Brian Albert.
The probe centers around Read's communication with the controversial content creator Aiden Carney, who calls himself Turtle Boy. Cosgrove says law enforcement has always planned to search the devices, and any suggestion that it is retribution is unfounded public relations spin. A previous attempt to indict Karen Read for targeting witnesses failed in front of a grand jury. Aiden Carney, on the other hand, is facing witness intimidation charges, which he denies on the grounds of free speech.
Phones were seized and they haven't been searched.
No,
they haven't been.
And they can't be searched.
In a November 2025 affidavit, State Police Lieutenant Brian Tully confirmed Read's passwords are needed to immediately access her phones. Tully argues that Read's conversations with Carney did not cease after Carney's devices were seized, and her devices may yield evidence of any such conversations.
I think that the case against Turtle Boy flies in the face of the First Amendment as well. I hope that this investigation into Karen Read, which seems like retribution, finally comes to an end.
Cosgrove tells me he works independently of the Norfolk DA's office. He says he filed a legal memo during Read's second trial stating this investigation was moving forward. We'll be watching to see what Judge Krupp decides.
And we will be as well. Shout out to Ted Daniels doing an amazing job over there. I agree, man. Turtle Boy should be able to say what he wants to say. And a lot is being alleged that this is one of the main reasons Karen Read has an issue, because there may have been conversations that took place that now jeopardize her, and she may be facing more issues as a result of this. So we're going to stay up to date on that. Lastly, I thought you all would find this interesting when it comes to the funding for the McAlberts side. We have this update. Now, I haven't personally verified this, but this is something I saw that was interesting, and I want to know y'all's take on this, because it's looking like Yuri Buchanan is asking people to support the Alberts and the McCabe's when it comes to their legal fund. What does it say? There's no way an active duty state police trooper is posting on social media in support of witnesses involved in ongoing trials that his unit investigated. I think Yuri Buchanan and Brian Tully are probably on the way out of MSP. This is evidence of bias and compromises cases. Yuri Buchanan allegedly says this: As I post infrequently, when I do, it is usually noteworthy. The struggle, the conflict is straightforward. It is a contest between decency, justice, and order versus evil, chaos, and lunacy. They need your support, every donation, regardless of the amount. And it's alleged that he is sharing the link to the support for the legal fund of the Alberts, the McCabe's, Brian Higgins, and the others. Let me know what y'all think about this. Is that true? Is it not? We'll have to find out. And when it comes to Karen Read being moved to federal court, are we going to be able to get information for that readily? Y'all know we'll be here to talk about it, and I'll give you guys an update as soon as we find out. Crazy stuff here. Crazy stuff. Shout out to everybody who's in here, man. Y'all are amazing. Still over 11,000 of you in here, and 15,000 of you liked the video. Thank y'all. The begging work. Thank you, Amy, for reminding everyone to like the video. We're going to go ahead and get up out of here for the weekend, but we're not done with the content, because I will be posting throughout the weekend. So you make sure, if you haven't yet, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any time that we go live or drop a new video. Thank you to everyone that liked the video. Y'all help out so much by doing that. I appreciate it. Thank you to everyone that shares, and a very, very special thank you to everyone who sent in the super chat. And let me shout y'all out real quick. Shout out to Les Cleaver, Mr. Brown, shout out to Catfish3611 becoming a new member. And of course, my awesome, amazing Amy E is up in here. Hope y'all have a great rest of your afternoon. Eat some more turkey if you're feeling up to it. And as always, you know what to do. Keep growing, keep pushing, keep it classy. We gon' peace. Y'all have a great weekend. I'll see some of you tonight.